Hello, folks. Welcome back to the Straightforward Farming Podcast. I'm your host, Tony Reed, alongside Nick McCormick on a cold, nasty winter night.
It is nasty out there. Miserable.
Yep. Currently setting at a temperature of -4 with a wind chill of -29.
Yeah, not what I needed.
No. And it sounds like we're going to get just a little bit colder yet.
It does. Yeah. Getting some of that freeze and thaw. And I went outside and I was looking for that global warming, but I couldn't find any. So I put my snow boots on, went ahead and came over here.
Yep, same way. I couldn't find it. Looked high and low.
Yeah.
Would sure be glad to have some right now, but
yeah, no doubt. No doubt raising that temperature a few degrees wouldn't be all bad right now. But
yep,
here we are.
Absolutely. So we've been sitting here shooting the shit, talking about draper heads, and we thought, well, shit, we might as well be recording this. So I guess we'll pick up where we left off.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
we've upgraded this year from a 2019 John Deere 730 FD to a new 735. I think it's an RD is what it is. It's sitting out the dealership in the shed. Ain't picked it up yet. We're going to wait till after the first of the year for tax reasons. But so that's what we're doing. But got to talking about MacDons and different things. I can't knock a MacDon head because I've never ran one. Lots of them around here.
Yeah.
I guess my thing is with the Deere, I can tip my feeder house side to side as well as front to back.
Yeah.
So, and that was always the big selling point to me on the MacDon was, if it gets late at night, tip the gutter bar back and keep going. So I'm doing that with the feeder house. Plus, I have the benefit of a flex head in there too, And don't misunderstand me. I'm not knocking MacDon. I'm not saying they're bad head, whatever. I just...
Wasn't that many years ago you couldn't do that with a combine, though.
Exactly.
So there was some benefit there. I think it depends on your situation, whether the flex is the better way to go or whether the hinged head's the better way to go.
Yeah, we're so flat around here.
Yeah, the flex works better for me.
Yeah, same here, I would say.
We went to a not world-renowned model of a 3162 Case IH head, and I'll be honest with you, we got along really, really well with it. I really can't complain about it.
Yeah.
It worked good. I was tickled. Now, we went from an auger head to that, but it's fine. I got really no complaints with it. That I realize that big ledge seems dumb.
So when you talk about this big ledge, what is that, like the stone dam right behind it?
More or less. I don't know how big your Deere one is because I haven't been around it recently enough to remember.
It's probably 2 to 3 inches max.
But, so the Case IH one's a center drive, so the gearbox is in the middle.
Okay, so how does that work then?
Well, it's just got this big flat gearbox in the middle that's covered. I mean, obviously, and then you have 2 sickle heads, 2 knife heads. So on a bigger head, the knife head, the sickle's not that long, because it's broken in 2.
Yep, that's what ours is on a 30-foot on Deere, but they're dual drive on the end.
This is in the middle.
Okay.
So,
which I guess now that you mentioned that, is a MacDon that way or some of the early? I've seen that on, or maybe it's a Honeybee or one of them companies is that a way.
They might be. I don't know.
I think
a MacDon's not. I don't think.
I think it's a Honeybee.
But you got to have room in there. Something's got to be able to flex because your belts aren't flexing. So you've got your stainless shields there across, and it ends up being a little bit of a ledge. It doesn't affect anything. I got along with it fine. If I had tons of acres of really short stubble beans, I would maybe be more concerned. Yeah. But normal beans like we should be growing, it does fine. Yeah,
so how do you get the sickle out of that then if it unhooks in the middle? Does it unhook and still pulls out the end of the head?
That's a damn good question. The truthful answer here is I don't know.
Really?
I didn't have to swap it out. I have a spare one for it, and mine's not in the head cart.
I
don't know where we swapped all that stuff, but I swapped it all to Crary because I'm a Crary guy and it needed sickle sections and guards. So we took everything off. Well, then it was pretty easy. Yeah. So I put all new knife heads
odds are that probably unbolts the drive
and
then it pulls out the end. So you don't have to take everything out.
Yeah. You don't have to pull everything out. Yeah. But
interesting.
That part, I see what they were going for there. I don't know if that was the best plan, but it didn't cause me any grief. Seems to be fine.
Yeah. I think a lot of heads, whether it's a MacDon, any of it, I think a lot of guys don't take time to adjust them or they get them adjusted improperly.
Absolutely.
And then they just walk away from it. This thing's junk, where a Deere is pretty basic, and there's no big adjustments to be made.
But even on your auger heads, like I can talk to 5 guys with 1020 Case IH heads from the mid 90s, mid 2000s, whatever, early 2000s. Oh, this one's mine sucks. Mine's awesome. Mine sucks. Mine's awesome. It's like it's the same thing. There's only one of two things that happened here. Either somebody hauled it to an auction here or there, and they had it stacked on top of a disc, on top of a field cultivator, on top of a wagon, and it got tweaked.
Wrong. Yep.
Or it's out of adjustment. Like, and some of that comes back to, was it set up properly by the dealer? Yeah. Originally, I think a lot of those heads probably leave and probably weren't right to begin with. Farmer A just puts up with it. He trades it off, and then it becomes somebody else's problem, and then they're just frustrated.
Yep. You ever stop to think how many guys, like you say, especially on an older machine where you can't do as much stuff from the cab, is think about tire sizes on a combine, And so this guy, he just picks up this platform and the pitch is all wrong on the feeder house, and and they've never checked any of that.
I just talked to Ryan Peters about that. 2 weekends ago when we were on that bus trip.
Yeah,
he ran into that. Traded combines. This one set a little different. Took him a little bit to get it squared up, and it's good.
Yep.
On the older combines, and any rotaries really this way. I always want the ass setting up a little bit, just to hold the crop in there.
Yeah,
it always seems like they work better if the rear end's a little tall. But. Yeah, a lot of that stuff I think is just poor adjustment. Like back in the day, some genius at Case IH came up with the 1.5 inch cut, which was essentially a wall of steel that doesn't cut. Well, a lot of those got converted to 3-inch cut. Well, if you don't swap a few other things around, they're running at the wrong speed. And a lot of those guys, this thing still doesn't cut. Well, it's because it's not running at the right speed. You put it at the right speed like everybody else's, it's fine. But
yeah, and I've always wondered too, every year I calibrate both heads on my combine when I get out of the shed, even though them same heads have been on the same combine for 3 years now. Every year I still calibrate all that shit before I go to the field, and I don't ever have no trouble.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to that. What I have learned is owner's manuals they're a cryptic deal, because a lot of guys are scared to death of those things. Like, I don't know if somebody opened one of those and their head exploded or what, but there's a ton of people that...
I think I mentioned that on TikTok, and I probably got literally 150 messages from people all over the country when last fall I was talking about level the concave in your combine.
Yeah.
And I had guys that shot me messages that said, man, I've been fighting this thing for 3 years, and I leveled the concave, and it fixed it.
Yeah.
And it tells you right there. And the one guy even said, I'll be damned, it does tell you that in the owner's manual.
Yeah.
It does.
There's a lot of information in there if you just thumb through it and look at it.
Yeah. Even though they're 3 inches thick and there is an inch worth of safety shit, there's still 2 inches worth of shit that is actually helpful.
Can we make the safety shit a supplemental pamphlet? So we can just chuck that thing and just have the information in there, Be so much easier.
Yeah, it would.
Instead, we make all these other features a supplemental pamphlet, and it's like, just put all the safety shit in one thing that none of us are going to look at and go on.
Yeah. It makes you wonder, And I even see it locally, and anything can happen. In fact, this year, went to the field and shoot right out the gate. I broke an auger chain on the corn head, and no rhyme or reason. It was in adjustment. It just broke,
Yeah.
But, I see guys that go to the field and literally the first day have these major failures. It's like, there is no way you checked that before that combine left the shed, but the problem that you had, there is no possible way.
Yeah, that's absolutely fact. Yeah, absolutely fact.
I'll dick with our combine for a good 2 weeks. Just tinker with it here and there. Not all day for 2 weeks, but, you work on it for 2 or 3 hours a day and check this and double check that and adjust this and have it in tip-top shape and seem to get along pretty good, And you're always going to have stuff.
You're going to have things here and there. I think the problem with a lot of that stuff is, and this happens to everybody, but it's like, okay, we're kind of messing with the combine. We're not going to be in the field for a couple more weeks. We're piddling with this. We're checking that. Oh, shit, the neighbor's in the field. He tells me his corn's 18. I got to go. Doesn't matter how much more stuff hasn't been checked yet at this point.
Yep.
We were running it last year. It should be fine.
Yep.
It'll make it a day or two. It's going to rain. Then we'll check it out.
Yeah.
And then
never happens. Yeah.
The season ends. It's like, we never did get that fixed. And it's like, no, we never did.
And people think I'm full of shit, and this is God's honest truth. And, we've always traded combines every 5 years. Now, this one we got, now that I've taken over, it's probably going to be around a while, which is fine. I like it. It's a nice combine. But even though trading every 5 years, I don't know if I've put a bearing on any of them combines in the last 15 years. I really don't know that I have. If I have, it's only been one or two somewhere goofy, but we don't have bearing problems.
Yeah, we don't have much trouble with that for the most part.
And now, granted, these are low-hourred combines that I've ran.
Yeah.
They ain't been wore out or whatever.
Yeah.
But still, we don't have much trouble.
That's where I'm always torn one way or the other. The trend amongst manufacturers is to get rid of grease points, because when you're looking at the service intervals and this, that, and the other, well, 10 grease zerks is way better than having 20. I'm like, yeah, for the guys that aren't greasing them, but I'm like, a bearing that you can grease, it gets greased properly, like, how does it ever go out if it's getting greased with good grease timely?
Yeah.
Like, it almost can't, but my complaint with some of the, the seal bearings is, Wuhan in China ain't really pumping them full, and the grease they are putting them in is shitty.
Yeah.
So I just assume they'd be greasable at some level. Yeah, I don't want to get covered in grease in the morning and jack with all that. Like, the time to do it's when you get done for the day, but at that point in time, you're ready to be done.
Right. And everything's filthy, dirty, and everything's hot.
And then you do it in the morning. You're like, well, now I need to go take a shower before I get in the combine.
Yeah.
So I get all that, but
I don't know off the top of my head on our combine. I mean, if there's 10, there's probably not even that many 50 hours, or there's a couple 400, but there's probably not even 10 50s. I mean, it's probably more like 6 or 7.
They've pretty much reduced all that stuff off, and I'm like, at some level, make them all greasable and give me an auto luber.
Yeah.
Let it grease them for me and go on. But, then you get guys in the argument, well, okay, let's say the Outdogger on 2388, it's greasable. 10 hours, I think. Is that 10 hours of use? Or is that 10 hours of swinging the auger? Because 10 hours of swinging the auger get me all the way through the season.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's 10 hours of use. No, I think it's 10 hours worth of swinging it. Okay.
Yeah. Right. Well,
Maybe.
and some of that, it wouldn't matter if there's so few Zerks now, it wouldn't matter if you doubled them. Mm-hmm. It's still going to take you. Basically, you can't run fuel in the combine fast enough. While it's fueling up, you can have the whole combine greasing and still jack around.
And grease zerks, at this day and age, aren't near as big a deal now that you have wonky cordless grease guns. Like, back when you were hand pumping it with a lever and you basically got to have somebody hold the hose and somebody pump the grease gun, like, grease zerks are a pain in the butt.
Yep.
But now, that had to be the number one thing for grease companies. They've had to triple the amount of grease they sell. I know I use a hell of a lot more, and I greased stuff pretty religious before, you know.
I know when I was out on wheat harvest, those guys always told me they had a neighbor, and this would have been back in like the 7720 combine days. Mm-hmm. They had a neighbor. He was an old guy, and all he done was farmed. He wasn't a custom harvester or nothing, but he was very particular, and he religiously watched the hour meter. Like, if them were 10 hours Zerks, they said it didn't matter if he was halfway through the field. He stopped and greased everything, but they said at the end of the day, he didn't seem to have any less bearing trouble than anybody else. I mean, so.
Yeah. The other thing about some of that stuff is, like, okay, that's manufactured recommendation. Well, was that from a marketing standpoint? Was that from an engineering standpoint? Was that from a whatever standpoint? Or was that, a rough guesstimate? A lot of that stuff doesn't get tested. They weren't out running S790s to 7,000 hours.
Right.
They tested it. It was fine in the first 1,500. Should be good. So this is our grease interval. Well, maybe it is, maybe it's not.
Look at the bushels that come through. Just take a spot on the unloading auger. Look at the bushels that come through one now compared to a 6620. I mean,
exactly. And I mean, that stuff, new models come out so quickly now. There's no way they tested that.
Yeah, couldn't
with thousands and thousands and thousands of hours.
There's not enough hours in the calendar.
No, exactly. I'm like, and there's not enough season to do that. But yes, they have test stands, and yes, they run some of that, and that's all neat, and that's great, and that's a great way to learn. But that's not real world. In 20-degree weather, shelling corn, this, that, and the other, in a light mist and rain, like. It's not.
And I would think the brand and quality of grease would have a lot to do with it too. I mean, there's some shit grease out there.
Absolutely.
So I don't know. Yeah, it makes you wonder where they come up with some of them numbers.
People always look at that grease thing funny. I mean, we sell some pretty high end grease for the most part, and it's funny how people look at that. I just had a buddy of mine argue with the other day. Oh, it don't matter what kind of grease it is on some of that stuff. I'm pushing grease out of that anyway. It doesn't matter. I can run crap grease in that. I'm like, I can't think of a situation where shitty grease is better.
Yeah.
I had a buddy of mine one time. He's like, I kind of fell for this one grease deal and had it sitting on the dash of my truck and grabbed a tube and popped the cap and all the grease ran on the ground. I thought, well, it's not good to 120 degrees. I guess I don't need to put it in anything. Right. Like, well, of course I couldn't because it was laying on the ground then.
Yeah.
He's like, I decided that maybe I need to go to something a little better. I'm like, yeah.
Our standard procedure for wheel bearings, for whatever reason, is we've always ran that red lubrication engineer's grease. That shit, it's like real sticky, It's good grease. It's expensive, but for whatever reason, when it comes to wheel bearings, we use that on wheel bearings, then just use John Deere grease on a normal bearing, you know.
I can tell you that good grease is worth every penny.
Yeah.
Cheap grease is more expensive in the long run. I can tell you that.
Yep. We just actually, and it don't matter if all the years we ran rolling baskets or discs or disc blades, but I don't know. But we maintain stuff. You know, we keep it greased, and we just
some of that shit. I don't know that it matters. Like,
yeah, I think.
I mean, it does matter. I shouldn't say it that way, but in a world of, I'll just call it, in a world of Chinese bearings, some are better than others, and it's pretty random. And you could put two of the same bearings side by side, run with one with grease and one without, and it's a crapshoot on which one's going to go out first. Like, I've seen guys that are really, really religious about maintenance, etc., have a premature bearing failure on something, and I've seen guys that might as well have been running it underwater get by a lot longer than they should have. You know. But a lot of it has to do with the quality of the Chinese steel that day and how much grease they put in it from the factory. And
we bought that 512 Deere chisel new in '08. It's a 17.5 footer. And I would say, because we were still running the old Glencoe with it, or on bean stubble at the time. So it's probably had 500 to 600 acres a year, every year since '08 on it.
Yeah.
Still got the original disc blades, got all the original bearings on it. Everything's tight, no issues there. I bought another 512 before harvest because we went to a bigger tractor, so I went to a 22.5 footer, come from up north. And it was in okay shape. We went and looked at it. I mean, you could tell the disc blades were getting worn. We noticed one bearing out on a corner, you know, and whatnot. Of course, it was folded up and didn't have no tractor, you know, or whatever. But just eyeballing, well, you know, I got it bought right. I mean, well under the money. So got it home. Well, once we got it unfolded, I mean, there were some bearings that were out, you know, which is fine. I mean, I got it bought right, you know, no big deal there. But it makes you wonder. I mean, the one bearing that we knew was out on the corner. I mean, like the balls were completely, I mean, it was completely out. It's like, you know, how could you run something that long? I mean, I don't know if the guy knew he was trading it.
The secret is, Tony, don't look back.
I guess, but God.
What you want to do there is click your auto steer on, get on your phone, and just look forward. I want to revolutionize the ag industry. And I want to just be able to do a heads-up display on the windshield of your tractor from your phone, so it's on big screen.
There you go.
Because you're not watching shit anyway.
Right.
Set it up to where you could swipe and wipe the windshield. Hell, by the end of the day, if we got a rag, you'll have the whole thing clean. You'll be watching all kinds of stuff.
Yep. I will admit this. You know, we bought that 9460R before fall, and prior to this one, we still got our 9230 four-wheel drive, but it's more of a row crop. You know, got 20.8 tires on it. You know, it's a small one. Not a lot of horsepower, but, you know, this has got the big tires on it and everything, plenty of horse. And I will admit, it had been a long time since I'd ran a big four-wheel drive, since back at the co-op days putting anhydrous on. But, God, that was nice, you know. Got a big ripper on it. You can go to town, anhydrous. It rides better, pulls good.
You can never have enough horsepower in a four-wheel drive.
And, you know, for spring, we're only going to have a 34-foot field elevator on it.
You'll just be cruising on that.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, where do you draw the line on that? I mean, it could definitely handle something much, much bigger than that, but hell, why go swapping everything around? You know, we bought it mainly for anhydrous and for ripping was our main thing, you know.
Yeah. Shift up, throttle back.
Yeah, because a lot of that, you know, you get a bigger tractor, then you get a bigger tool, well, now you're lugging and spinning and shit just as bad as you was, so what's the difference, you know?
Well, you're getting more done, Tony, allegedly.
Yeah, but we got a neighbor up here that runs sunflowers, and he's always been the same way, runs the same size we do, and you know, on big tractors, and never, like you say, just throttle back and.
Yeah. Well, you're way better off to have too big a tractor and a small tool than you are to have a small tractor and too big a tool.
Yep.
Then you can't really do much with that.
Yeah, I think anymore, if it was up to me, I'd probably have just a fleet of all four-wheel drives and farm.
I'm with you there.
I don't mind front-wheel assist. Like, my planting tractor is a good tractor, but I think at the end of the day, if I had a nice 9230 that I could plant with, I think I'd just soon plant with a four-wheel drive.
I don't know about planting with a four-wheel drive because I haven't tried that necessarily, but if I'm going to the field for anything else, and I love my front-wheel assist, and they're nice, but I'd take my four-wheel drive. Well, I do take my four-wheel drive. Yeah. Nobody else wants to climb all the way up there, and that's the way I like it. You stay out of that. That way I know it was just the way I parked it, and that's fine.
I know the first time I ever ran a four-wheel drive was back at the co-op days. It was a 9370 Case International. And I had to move it from one plant to another and didn't have a tool on or nothing. Just had to go get the tractor and bring it home. And I remember when I first got on the road, I thought, man, this is awkward as hell, you know, and just the way it turned, you know, and backing up to shit. And the first day in the field, I thought, well, this ain't too bad once you catch on. After about the third or fourth day, it's like, holy shit.
Yeah, you're not taking this away from me.
Yeah, yep, that's the only way to go.
Yeah. Fortunately, I mean, my dad and my brother have run our four-wheel drives a little bit, not near as much as I have, and that's fine. But it is interesting how different people view different things on four-wheel drives. Like, in my mind, a Versatile, or an older Versatile anyway, and even the blue Versatiles after that, they drive backwards. They don't drive like a Case IH or a Deere. I haven't spent a ton of time in a Deere, but I've moved some here and there, a little bit, whatnot. They drive funny. You set low, like they don't drive the same, and I'm sure you catch on to it and it'd be fine, but they drive different, And I've been on all different walks of that now. Like, you hop out of a 2+2 into a four-wheel drive, like, it's a different deal. You're instead of following, you're leading, and that's fine. Then you have to put a case in the shop, and I haven't spent any time in the field with one of those, but we've worked on several of them. It's like, well, this is new. Oh, there's the tire shutter. And once it stops, then I can go ahead and move and whatnot. All that stuff drives different. It's all a little quirky, and you got to get used to it. But once you spend a day or two in it, like you said, it's fine. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. That 9370 that I ran, I like the way that tractor was laid out. And that would have been back around the year 2000-ish, roughly.
They knocked it out of the park on that deal.
The one thing that sticks out in my mind that I absolutely loved on that tractor was the decelerator pedal. But, the Deere is just a dimmer switch, so it's either all or none, where that one you could feather it
right where
just to where you wanted it. And, man, that was nice. I wish they would go back to that on tractors.
Yeah. Well, I guess IH is still that way.
Are they really?
I think. I haven't been in any super new ones, but last one I was in was that way.
No kidding.
Yeah. Now that feature is nice to the point that you use that so much, it's almost hard to hop out of one of them into a front wheel assist, like back and forth, so on and so forth.
I remember after spending all fall in that, and of course, the way them were designed, the windshield was looked like it was 5 feet in front. I mean, it was a long, I mean, you couldn't touch it, just sitting normally in the seat. And I remember after getting out of that, jumping in a 7130 Magnum, it's like, holy shit, the windshield was like 2 inches from your face, it felt like,
I remember years ago, I was drilling with our 5288 International, and one of the seals had started to blow right towards the end of spring on the drill, so you had to bump the lever here and there. And we're like a day from finishing, we're not going to take the time to fix it now. We just keep bumping the lever. So I remember that day, I'd been bumping it all day long, no big deal. And I got in my truck and I fired it up and I went about 100 feet and I reached over to hit that lever and about threw my arm out of socket because there was no lever and I did not need to do that. But you got so used to doing that through the day. It's like, oh, yeah, I'm driving my truck now. I don't need to do that anymore.
Yep. I used to do that back in the old days, get in and stomp the floorboard looking for the clutch,
Yeah, been there.
Wrong vehicle.
Like, oh, I'm going to need some knee surgery now. Yeah, they need to put a fake clutch pedal in there for no reason, if nothing else, just to hit it.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Our Hestons growing up always had foot throttles. Mm-hmm. Well, then you hop on something that doesn't have one. It's like, well, shit. This isn't near as handy. Of course, back in the 80s, not a lot of stuff did. On those Hestons, they had phenomenal brakes. So I always laid my left foot on the brake. Like, you didn't have to push. You just set your boot on there sideways, and that was enough, generally. Well, then you hop in a International or a John Deere, and you're like, oh, shit. Well, then you got to hit the brake a little harder, and you don't have the foot throttle, and, you got to get used to it.
Yeah, and all the 30 and 40 series Deere, when you hit the brake, always make that crackling sound. Mm-hmm. Whatever that is going on, but they all do it.
But it sounds like you just knocked the rear end out.
Yeah, it does. I remember Grandpa's 4230 when I was a kid done that, and I think every 30 or 40 series Deere I've ever been in, they make a crackling noise when you...
And a lot of those tractors, like you push, and it doesn't do much, and then it starts pushing back at you.
Yeah.
And it's like it's angry.
Yep.
Yeah. Good times.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, like I said, it's all what you get used to. At some level, you're better off to switch back and forth, so you're used to all of it. But
yeah,
it is nice.
I don't know anymore. Is there a whole lot of difference between like a Deere? I mean, does like a Case tractor still have the chrome? It was a throttle with all your shit.
Yeah,
kind of like an old style hydrostatic.
I haven't ran the super new ones, but yeah, it's got a chrome handle with your remote functions on it and some gear shift buttons.
I like that. Which I like the Deere controls too, but I like that in the Case. I always thought that was a neat.
I never liked the tiny Deere controls. Like, not to make Ryan mad, but an 8400 is a fine tractor. That's probably one of my if I had to pick a John Deere tractor that I could tolerate without vomiting, for the sake of argument today. But those teeny tiny little levers, like I like the little bigger deal. I like having my hand on the throttle and the shifters right there. But there again, it's all what you get used to.
Yeah.
You know, I mean.
And it looks like everybody's going joystick now. Even Deere's starting to do it.
Everything's going CVT for the most part.
I assume Case will have something similar. I don't know if
it's just a matter of time before you put this little helmet on and you just got to think about it and it'll happen.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I will tell you this, though, for being at the farm show, and I think you and I and maybe even Chuck Weldon jumped up in that Fendt tractor. Generally, any tractor on the planet I can get in, and I could muddle my way through it to raise the implement up and get it turned around. I have no clue.
I was all set that day to school you on that, and they've come out with a new console since I was in one. I'm like, yeah, I got nothing.
I've never seen so many buttons in my life.
Got nothing.
That was unbelievable.
And that goes back to my stupid universal symbols. I know we've complained about this on like 10,000 podcasts, but I was just complaining about that again today. I'm like, I am in the United States. Why do I? This was on a screen. I'm like, you can do that any which way you want. It's just a software deal. In that thing, it's physical buttons, so you'd have to make different versions of buttons. So I can kind of understand that. But when it's software, just label the damn thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Put what it is. It's not that hard.
Yep.
But yeah, that thing has a shit ton of buttons. Like I told you, the one I was in, I think would be easier to learn at night.
Yeah, that's what you said, everything.
Because it lights up different colors.
Yeah.
You know.
And it sounds like everybody, I think the new Deeres are this way. You just hook the hydraulic hoses up. If they're backwards, you change it in the cab, all that stuff, which is a cool feature. With the Fendt,
like, if you're used to running number one remote all day long and you want to move your 3-point to number one remote, that's what you do.
Yeah.
Which would be nice. The nice part, I think, about the Fendt deal is I think all AGCO platforms now have common controls. So if you can run a Terragator, in theory, you can run the tractor.
Gotcha.
Whatever. Yeah. I think. I haven't been in all those, but I think that's what they went with, which makes sense.
Yeah. I'd like to try a Fendt tractor. I've heard nothing but good things about them, and people seem to really like them.
The big one that I ran was badass. It was an animal.
Now, what's them got for a motor?
A man.
A man.
Man, yeah.
I think your dad mentioned that today, didn't he, on something? Or no, we was talking, somebody was telling me about trucks over in, man, I can't remember now if I seen that.
I think they use that engine in trucks in Europe, maybe.
Yeah, because somebody was talking about man trucks, wherever they was. I tell you what it was. It was the other night when I was down my Uncle Jim's there. I had to take him his cake for payment on the 4010, and he was telling some of the traveling they'd done, whether it was Africa or they'd been to Israel. I forget where. We kind of traveled all over a little bit. And that's what it was. He was saying the trucks, MANN, I think is how it's. And,
I think, yeah.
Yeah. Yep, that's what it was.
I mean, it didn't run any RPMs, but it would get the job done. I was pretty impressed with that part of it, I will have to say.
I couldn't get used to that in our 9460R, so this fall I done that deal where you know, it's not an IVT, but you can take your little thumb wheel and dial the RPMs down, but maintain the speed or whatever. And boy, it just don't seem right to me.
It doesn't seem right. I will agree. I tried it in both modes. You can rev it wide open.
Right. That's where I did run it.
It doesn't do anymore, so I just let it. You can put it in auto and let it do its thing, and it runs like 1,300 and fast idle basically, and goes on. But
and the thing that got me was I got to watching on the monitor in there run. You could monitor the fuel or whatever. Yeah. And I was burning exactly the same amount of fuel because I might run it for 2 or 3 hours on the whatever mode you want to call it, where it throttles it back.
Yeah.
And I forget what the number was, and then I would switch over to just be running it wide open, run it that way for 2-3 hours. Wouldn't hardly ever change. Maybe 1/10 of a gallon here or there, but it never. So it's like, well, hell, I just soon run it wide open.
I think the Fendt's considerably better in auto.
Is it?
I think. Yeah. And it was pretty good on fuel for as much power as it had.
Yeah.
I didn't have a lot of complaints with that. Of course, I hadn't spent a ton of time in super, like brand new Case or Deere stuff, but the GPS on it worked good. Like, I was skip passing because I only have 7-shank ripper on it or whatever. Man, you get a part way into your turn, hit the button, it'd pull right back in nice and square and good. I was well pleased in all of it. Like, it did a nice job. It's a nice tractor.
Yeah. I know this stuff's designed this way now because that's the way it runs, but do you think that's where a lot of these engine problems come from now, is they're not winding these diesels up and lugging them, or are we just backwards thinking that's the way we've think they should run because that's the way we've always run them.
That's the way we've always run them, and so I think we're thinking about some of that. Honestly, 90% of their problems now is stupid emissions shit. Like, that kills them more than anything. But they do it for fuel consumption. They don't wind them up as much. And, as growing up a red guy, like, they probably got a little carried away running their stuff too fast compared to most companies. I don't know. I mean, generally speaking anymore, like, do you hear about any engine failures that weren't some weird freak deal?
Right.
Either emission stuff went to shit or it was a freak deal.
Right.
Like, you don't hear about a ton of...
No, you don't seem to.
If you do, it's like, oh, crap, like Deere a few years ago, we made this hole a little bit bigger. Oh, shit, they break crankshafts left and right. We never, it never happened in testing, but it does now. And they solve it and they go on. You don't see a ton of engine failure now. Like, of course, a lot of that stuff isn't super old yet, but in my opinion, where you see engine failure stuff and the newer stuff is, we designed this, and then we put Billy Joe Jim Bob in charge of cost reducing it as much as he could so we could make a few more coins. And, well, these O-rings we picked for the sleeves, turns out they just ain't worth a shit. And we knew what we should have used, but we could get these other ones for 3 cents cheaper per 100. Yeah. And so we're going to make the 3 cents instead of you. And, now we got an O-ring problem. Or, that's usually where that stuff gets screwed up is in cost reducing of that, in my opinion, from what little bit I see of it. But
I guess nowadays, what's the big deal on nitpicking something that's that expensive that much? Because it's like at the end of the day, it's like just put the good quality shit on there. If it costs another $10,000, I mean, what the hell's the difference on a $500,000 tractor?
Margin's margin, though. And that bumps you into the next category of, you can't if you can't compete on price. Like Buddy and I were just talking about this today on pellet smokers, actually. And he's like, well, this one used to be made in America and it was badass, but they're too high compared to everybody else's Chinese one. Okay. He's like, then they started making them in China and they lowered their price a little bit, but they're still not price competitive, but their quality's not as good. So now they're stuck in the middle. They're not as good as they should be, but they're still overpriced. I'm sure they're making good money on them, but their sales really dropped off because, well, if I'm going to buy a shitty one, I'll just buy the cheap one.
Yeah.
And that's where everybody's, oh, you can't build stuff over here because, people want this, they want the cheaper price. I'm the opposite.
Yeah, I'll pay for quality.
I'll pay for quality. You find me the American-made one that's going to last like it should, and I'll take that one. But in 90% of the stuff anymore, you can't even find that. Like, it doesn't exist.
Yeah. Shit ain't built here now because of the fucking regulations and the lawyers is why it ain't built here.
Well, true. And, all the regulation, that's for damn sure. I just saw a couple TikToks today, and I knew this was the case, but it's frustrating to get reminded of it. There's a company that's advertising, American-made flags from all American-made materials made in America. I'm like, that shouldn't even be a thing.
Yeah.
How sad is it that most of your flags aren't made in America? Like,
it's awful.
And it's no wonder you go through one every 2 days. Like, it's just infuriating. And hats off to this company for seeing a need and fulfilling it. I'm going to order a couple tomorrow. But that's a stupid problem to have.
Yeah.
Like if we can't make our own flags,
right?
What can we make?
Right. As far as talking about the quality, now this is going to be a bad example because I don't know exactly where they're made, but it would be no different if you took a Honda four-wheeler and had it sitting here for sale versus some knockoff Roku, Chinese, whatever.
Yeah.
Guess what? I'm going to buy the Honda because it's quality.
Exactly.
I have no issue paying for quality. And at the end of the day, you're going to pay for it either up front or it's going to...
Where I think a lot of companies fall short on that deal is like they want to be the best, quote unquote, quality wise, but they also want to be price competitive. So they end up compromising, which is compromises how stuff gets done half-ass. And so we back the quality down to try to be more competitive on price. Well, now we got something that's maybe a little better quality, but it's enough higher in price. It's like, well, shit, I can buy 2 of these Roku whatevers, four-wheelers for the price of this one Honda. Well, shit, if it lasts, I'll just take that one, and if I got to buy another one down the road, I do. We don't account for inflation and, Biden inflation and all that. But I'd rather have the quality stuff.
Yeah, same
that's just me. But it's tough to find anymore. It doesn't matter if you're buying a flag, a four-wheeler, or a
cultivator sweeps, whatever.
Four-wheel drive. Yeah, at some point in time, like you see that slogan, and I'm going to mess it up now, but like the satisfaction of a cheap price goes away as soon as as soon as the quality goes to shit or something breaks on you or whatever, I don't remember the exact quote. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. Like, you got this smoking deal until it quits. Then you're like, well, I'd rather give an extra 10% for one that was good.
Yeah. It's no different when I was shopping for little tractors and bought that little John Deere there a year ago. Yeah, I could have went to Rural King and literally bought an RK brand for, I don't know, $10,000 cheaper, but I didn't want it because I haven't even walked up and looked at one, but I don't think I need to.
Yeah, exactly. And I do think, not sticking up for them, but I think they learned their lesson on those early ones, and I think they have solved some of that now, possibly. But yeah, you're exactly right. It's like,
and to me, parts and service is worth a lot, too.
It is.
I can call the John Deere dealer.
And I think they learned their lesson on that somewhat as well. But there again, once you get burned and once the word is out, quote, so to speak, it's hard to recover from that.
It is.
It's hard to recover from that. To the point, like, you might have to switch the brand name or at least the model number and some other things and try to rebuild starting over. Like, I don't know, the major brands, well, I'll just use their sideline products, okay? Deere, Case, AGCO, whoever. Let's say they're making a head carrier, whatever it is. Well, they've got clout in the fact that it's name brand, quote unquote. And it might not be any better than anybody else's, but they've also been there for 100 years. So we're going to go with that over company A, B, C, D because, well, maybe theirs is better, but maybe they won't be there. I mean, that's a fine line to walk. And there's a ton of sideline companies that are 10 times better than the big three.
Sure.
In their niche market.
Right.
But, and then you get into the whole mud discounts and the volume and throwing all this stuff together, and that's a whole separate topic. But I mean, if you look for years, and I'm talking in the 80s or when we were kids, the only decent four-wheel drive loader tractor you could get back then was a Kubota. I mean, Case and them, their loader tractor, they didn't have very many front-wheel assists in this area. They weren't, but Kubota always had a good hold in the little utility tractor. IH was not strong in the utility market for sure.
And maybe there's a reason. Maybe they don't want to be. I don't know.
I don't know why you wouldn't want to be. But,
yeah. I mean, that's got to be.
Yeah. But Kubota's a good example. Like, they had a tough road to hoe initially. They got known for their quality. And then some of that has probably regressed a little. But I think where Kubota kills it, on a side note, is if you walk in and you got $50 a month, Jim walks in, he's got $150 a month, Bill walks in and he's got $50,000 cash and $500 a month, they're going to send you out with a tractor.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Yep, you're not going to get as many features as he is, but they've got enough models. Like, that's always been the way. I talked to a lot of Case dealers over the years that were dual dealers, Deere dealers that were dual dealers. Not very many of them because most of them aren't. And they're like, well, the difference is their peak is similar to ours, but they've got 5 models below that. And if you don't really need this feature and you don't have the extra $100 a month, because a lot of that shit's a monthly deal on your small stuff, well, here, we'll send you out with this XYZ series, and you'll be fine.
Yep. And that's why Deere and a lot of them had to come out with so many more models, because Kubota and them already set the standard.
Exactly. You see that now with Deere. We got a premium. We've got this. We've got that. Like they learned from
told
that.
me, because when I bought my little 4044M, I was wanting an R series, which the next one was a 4052R is the next one up, and the only difference is it's got a turbo on it.
Yeah.
52 horse versus 44. But they didn't have any. This was through the whole COVID mess or whatever. But anything you can take anything off the R series and put it on the M series if you want to.
Which is smart on their part.
Yeah. But that's what we got to talking. We was asking why they had so many and this and that. And they said it all revolved around Kubota. They had to compete with Kubota and all that shit.
Exactly. It's no different than you can buy a F-150 XL, XLT, Lariat, King Ranch, Platinum. Like, the automotive stuff has kind of drifted over into the tractor world now.
But I still say the day's got to be coming where you're going to buy one basic model with whatever engine, and they're going to tune the horsepower and give you all the options through the software.
Yeah.
That's what it'll be. I mean, wouldn't that be an easy way to streamline it?
Well, yeah. I think they're going to go to subscriptions on that of some fashion. But, like, on the smaller stuff, it always irritates me. Like, they always package all that stuff up. Okay, so let's say you're Joe Livestock Farmer and you need a tractor with a badass loader, front wheel assist, good hydraulics, and that's about it. You don't need draft control. You got a bale carrier on the back. No reason for draft control in that. What's that option cost? You can't delete it out of the package. It comes with every model. Don't need it. Never going to use it. Never even going to think about using it. It's probably going to cause you some trouble. You're probably going to spend some money on it, but you don't need it. You're never going to use it. Like in my mind, they do these packages ass backwards. Like, sell me the hay model, and the hay model doesn't have some of the shit on it that I don't need for if I was John Q. European farmer where I'm out plowing with this 125 horse tractor. I'm never going to plow with that in the Midwest.
Yeah.
Not even going to think about plowing with it in the Midwest. We're not plowing, and we're damn sure not taking 125 horse to a gunfight.
Yeah.
Like, not going to happen. Eliminate some of that shit. But, I mean, you see it in pickup trucks too. Like, okay, you want heated seats. Well, now all of a sudden you've got cameras galore, this, that, and you got 10,000 options that come in this package that you may or may not need, that you're probably never going to use, that you're probably not going to read the owner's manual to figure out how to use.
Exactly.
To begin with.
Isn't that Tesla or one of them companies now? It's a subscription for heated seats. I seen that on TikTok. It was
probably runs your battery dead.
Yeah, and it may not have been Tesla. Maybe it was Mercedes. One of them. It was now you had to subscribe. It was a monthly fee for heated seats.
Oh, sweet. Well, I guess that saves you the money in the summer.
I guess.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, like, I appreciate all those options at some level, but some of that shit I just flat ass out don't need.
Yeah. Well, they're getting these cabs too cluttered in here. There's so much shit in them. It's like
so much stuff in them.
Stop. Yeah. I mean,
well, like I said, there again, if I'm haying with this tractor, if I'm choring with it and I'm scooping manure with it and this, that, and the other, there's a lot of that stuff that I flat don't need. But it's in there, and if I want the turbo, so I've got enough power to do all this stuff. Well, now I get all these other options that I probably don't need. But that's the way it's packaged, so you're going to get it. And, when it quits, even though you're not using it, it kicks an error code that you get tired of screwing with, so you got to have that fixed. And that's the frustrating part for me on both sides of it, from the mechanic side to the farmer side. Like, it just, some of that you just don't want or need.
Yeah, for sure. And, semi-trucks sounds like 10 times worse than the ag industry. I mean, God, the guys I talk to, that's all it is. It's just codes and
codes and codes and codes. Yeah. D-rate. Yeah. Yeah. All over a def quality sensor or something stupid like that should literally never go bad. We shouldn't be on there to begin with, but that's a whole other topic that we've covered several times. But yeah, I don't know. In my mind, for a manure scraping tractor around a dairy lot, like, just give me the basics. Give me a front axle that never causes me a nickel worth of trouble, that's completely oversized.
And a lot of them guys would just as soon do away with all the electronic shit. Give me something with steel linkage.
Yes.
I want something that's dependable every day in 22 below weather.
Yep. Something that starts good.
Yep. I'm going to be having it in manure, mud, everything else. I don't need all these wires ripped off. I just want steel linkage.
Yeah. You want to give me an option? Give me an engine that starts good normally anyway, but also give me a grid heater and a glow plug button that I can push for when it's like it is now. So in the morning, I don't have to have it plugged in for 19 hours. So it'll run like it should, But they don't apparently know. I must be in the minority because they're not doing it that way.
I guess I probably don't run in the right circles, or I don't even see it on TikTok. But is construction equipment just as bad with the sensors and the bullshit?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Is it?
I talked to a construction guy. It's been a couple years ago now, and he was a big construction guy. And I forget how many pieces of equipment he told me he had. It was, let's say 150. And he told me, he's like, Nick, there hasn't been a day in the last 5 years where all 150 of those pieces of equipment would run.
No kid.
Not one day. One of them was always down with an emissions issue. At least one day the entire 5 years. Like, Jesus. I just talked to a guy the other day about the same thing, actually. We were having this exact same conversation, basically. And he said, where we really screwed up is, I think he was talking big articulated dump trucks, I think is what he was talking about. And I don't remember now, but I think that's what he told me. He's like, we made the biggest mistake we've ever made. He's like, we traded them. We bought 5 brand new ones. Biggest mistake we ever made. He's like, because now when one goes down, just get your watch out because the other one's going down too.
Really?
He's like, so now they all need the same shit at the same time. He's like, we should have traded one, waited 6 months or a year or whatever. He's like, it was a great move at the time because we had a job. We needed them all. We were starting off with all this good shit, and that's great. He's like, but now they all need all that same shit all the time at the same time. He's like, what you got to plan for a little bit budget-wise, like you got to keep some cash back because that shit's going to happen, and there you go. So he's like, I think he had 3 of them down when I talked to him. You know, he's like, now I got 3 of them sitting in the shop, trying to get them fixed. Like,
and that's the most frustrating part to me is it's this $5 sensor somewhere buried in all this shit.
Yeah,
it's hanging the whole show up. You know, it's one thing you break the crank and here, you know, it's like, well, okay, I guess whatever. But
yeah, now I'm down a O2 sensor that's buried underneath 10 hours worth of work.
Yeah.
You know, that shouldn't be on there to begin with. Yeah, well, that's the frustrating part. But that's the world we live in. Eventually it'll come back around. Eventually we'll break ourselves on stupid shit. Yeah. And it'll come back around. We won't be able to keep any of it going or working or this, that, and the other. And the world will reset and we'll have to start over and work our way back. But because we're really the only country that gives 2 shits about any of that. And
yeah, exactly.
Nobody else is doing that.
Yeah.
You know.
And have no intentions of doing it.
No. I mean, there's a few European companies that are worried about it, but
your big major players, China could give 2 shits less. Russia,
they're like, so our choice is smokes a lot and runs forever, or doesn't smoke and breaks a lot. We'll take smokes a lot and runs forever for $100. That's fine. Yeah. We don't give a shit. Our smoke blows over somebody else's country eventually anyway. We don't care.
Yeah. India and them places, they don't care.
They don't care.
I mean, they're running shit from the 1940s and 50s now. Mm-hmm. You know, the shit that we had in the 80s would be a ginormous upgrade to them guys.
Yeah, they're just glad if they have a starter on it. Yeah. I don't have to crank this by hand. Yeah. That'd be great.
Yeah, my uncle was telling me when he was down in Haiti there or something on some mission trip, you know, it was an eye-opener for him because he's the same way. You know, he hadn't traveled the world a lot until the last few years once they've been kind of semi-retired or whatever. But he said there was a spot down there where the entire town, I think it was in Port-au-Prince there, brought all their junk and garbage and everything and just threw it in this ravine just right there on the edge of town. Just threw it. I mean, you know, said this image was just full. And then every spring when the monsoons come and hurricanes and all that bullshit.
Yeah, it washes it away.
Wash it all right out in the ocean and we start over again, you know.
Yeah.
They don't give a shit.
They don't care. Yeah. We'll regulate ourselves into inefficiency at some point. And we're teetering on it now.
I was say we're getting close now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a sad state of affairs from that regard.
And I guess at the end of the day, we're our own worst enemy because we all kept buying this stuff. If we would all just stopped at 2388s and 9650s and just paid the income taxes and not upgraded, you know, they'd eventually get the writing be on the wall and they'd quit building this shit because they ain't selling it. But
yeah, some of that shit wears out. I mean, there's always going to be that guy. The frustrating part to me is, and we've touched on this before, and not that I want them to have it, but you don't see the top tier, the elite. They're flying around in planes that don't have any of that shit.
Yeah. U.S. military ain't running
military ain't running that shit. You know, they're still buying mechanical, you know, direct injected Cummins shit for generators on up. Like, they're not running that shit.
And I'm with you. I'm not wanting to put lives in jeopardy. I'm not saying that.
No, I'm not. But let's take ambulances and fire trucks, for example. Like, I kind of want those to run. They buy those with emissions now, but I think they finally passed a deal on that now where they can delete them now because they.
Yeah. Once again, the government, they can delete all their shit.
They're going to they've taken a perfectly good fire truck out of service in 5 years because they can't afford to keep the emission shit going, and they're just driving it around aimlessly throughout the day so it can burn off on the off chance they get a fire call because, well, now I'm derated. I'll be there in a minute. It's going to take us a little longer, you know. So they're letting them get around some of that. But, yeah, like I said, I don't want them to have that. But think of the thousands and thousands, well, it's millions of dollars that get absolutely just blown away for no reason on that.
Yeah.
Think what a new 1-ton truck could sell for without that shit, you know.
How many sensors and wiring harnesses are in landfills now off of 2-year-old trucks that would have never been there 10 years ago because it wasn't even on the vehicle then?
Yeah, exactly. And we could keep crawling down this rabbit hole. We've touched on it before, but it's super frustrating that it's your classic do as I say, not as I do. And this is good enough for you, but not good enough for me. and we're going to keep shoving this shit down your throat, all because we own company A, B, C, Y, D, and X, Y, Z, and we're going to push this regulation bullshit on you, even though we all know it's a farce. But, whatever. We'll make some money off of it, and you guys go on, you know. Yeah. We're seeing the same thing with solar panels, windmills, like the list goes on and on and on and on. Like, and that's the problem with America being too prosperous. We have too much money to piss away on dumb stuff.
Yeah.
At a lot of levels. We don't even have the money, but we have the illusion of money. We just keep printing it, which is a whole other topic. But we just keep printing it under the illusion that we have it so that we're going to save this and we're going to save that. I'd like a list of the shit projects that we've actually went after with literally trillions of dollars at this point, for sure billions. Have we solved any of those problems? I mean, we've been on the war on drugs for years.
Oh, that's all the rage when we were little kids in school.
Yeah,
I mean,
as far as I can see, we ain't winning that one. It looks like we're
so finally we threw in the towel and just legalized it. For the most part.
Exactly. I'm like, we're like, shit, we've pissed away $20 billion on this in the last 6 months. I guess we'll legalize it, tax it now. Now that's our solution now. Yeah. Legalize and tax from that regard. But it doesn't matter if it's global warming, which we had to say, shit, it's negative 21 outside. Now it's climate change, which, and I'm going to go off on a quick sidebar here. I think a lot of that comes down to, dare I say, lack of faith in the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and the fact that we think we can control all this as a society, which we can't, but we can't go with the fact that there's a higher power. So we're going to claim that we're going to save the world doing this, and most of it just comes down to money.
That's all it is.
We started a company, and we're going to find a way to fund that company very well by regulation of forcing you into doing something. If I tell you tomorrow, hey, Tony, your van has to be painted blue, and I coincidentally sell blue paint. It's got to be painted this shade of blue, and I'm the only guy that sells this shade of blue paint. Well, guess what? My bottom line looks pretty good. My Christmas is happening pretty nicely, And that's where we are in all this stuff.
And it comes down to the global redistribution of wealth.
Absolutely. Just
now they got to tax the piss out of our emissions and give it to these third world countries that just, all it is a giant money trail.
Round and round we go. Yeah. It's sad.
It is.
So sad.
It's terrible.
Yeah. But, I guess it is what it is. We'll keep complaining about it, but probably won't get it solved.
No, we won't get it solved.
If they just listen to us, we could take care of it.
If I could go back to any point in time, I would have probably liked to grown up in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. Mm-hmm. I think that's probably when America was at its true prime. I mean, everybody was prosperous.
Yeah,
things were rolling good. Technology was finally getting around.
It was rolling on, but you still had freedom to do what you wanted to do. Yeah, nobody got their feelings hurt every 15 seconds. Yeah. Boys were still boys, girls were still girls. Yeah. What a glorious time. Nobody looked like they fell in a tackle box.
Yeah.
When you looked at their face, they didn't have a bunch of shit shoved in their face here and there.
Yeah, I really think that's where technology has set us back, because it's took the human factor out of just simple human interaction.
What's our kids?
Yeah, exactly. They'd
rather text their friends than talk to them.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm not saying Mike, I'm just saying.
Yeah, they're just kids in general.
Kids, in this generation, like, they lack the ability to interact. Like, I went to the homecoming coronation there.
Yeah, I was there. Yeah.
Yeah, you were there. It's like those kids have never talked to a girl before.
Yeah.
I'm like, COVID's over, bud. You can get a little closer than that.
Yeah. So basically, is what this was at the school. It was for like here we don't do the prom king and queen. It's for the homecoming, So big basketball game. Then after that, you have this coronation. And so you got, what is it? There's 2 boys and 2 girls from freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, all the way up through. And then I think the students vote on who the king and queen will be.
It's only amongst seniors for the king and queen. And there was 4 couples.
Yeah.
From the senior class, whatever it was.
Something like that. So nonetheless, they crown the king and the queen, and then everybody's filing off of the stage down onto the gym floor, and then they're going to have their first dance, quote unquote, to this song or whatever. And Nick and I was laughing because they literally, it's like there was 2 feet between the guy and the girl, And they didn't even spin a circle. They just stood there and just bobbed back and forth, side to side.
My brother and I were talking about this, and I'm going to sound old here, but you were there too. I'm like, apparently they didn't have any sock hops back in the day, and which I realize is an old school term, but dances that younger kids could go to, et cetera, et cetera. I'm like, these people have clearly never done this before.
No, not even close.
No, not even close. Like, they obviously have not done this before.
Yeah, I laughed that whole night. I'm like, my God, this is.
Yeah.
It looked Amish. It's like they didn't know what to do. They just like stood there.
Yeah, it's I'm like, I don't know what to tell you guys, but you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
This is not how this goes.
Yeah.
It's going to take you years. I'm like, at this rate, you guys won't start repopulating until you're 55.
Right. I didn't expect it to be a Dirty Dancing theme
I don't
here,
need that.
by any stretch of the means, but what they were doing was not even close to dancing.
Yeah,
They literally
close.
were just bobbing back and forth from left foot to right foot.
Yeah.
Very, very slowly.
Yeah.
And it was weird.
Yeah, it was, I've seen more movement from a scarecrow on a still day. Yeah.
Yeah, and it wasn't like it was just one couple. I mean, it was all of them. All of them.
It was all of them, yeah. You could have fit a beach ball between any of them, which, having a daughter I can appreciate, I guess. I hope it stays that way at some level, I guess, but.
Yeah, times have changed.
Yeah.
Shit wasn't like that when we were in school.
No, it was not. No, it was not. Yeah.
I've said it before, though. I'm so thankful that I did grow up when I did, because we caught the tail end of, I guess, what I would call the old school ways. And I don't mean to make this sound like all kids today are just worthless and bad kids.
Absolutely not. I'm not saying
I don't mean that. I know there's tons
I'm not saying that. And some of it's just product of environment. Like, they just don't know any better.
Yeah, right.
You know, we didn't have cell phones to record all the dumb shit we did.
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
Thank God, yeah.
But now, I mean, we would. I mean, we would have recorded it, And maybe that's why there's a reduction in some of that. I don't know. But, it's a different world out there.
But if you just look at the technology that we got to see, just from regular TV, 3 channels, into cable TV, into satellite TV, into internet, VCRs. I mean, hell, I remember when we first got our first VCR as a kid. It was like revolutionary.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you were scared to death you're going to wear it out, so you had to buy a rewinder.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you want to wear that VCR out.
Yeah.
That thing's like $200 back then or whatever it was. It was
right.
Considering what you made back then, it was expensive.
Oh, for sure.
Now you can buy one for like $12.
It would be interesting if you walked out to the school today and asked anybody that's in high school, if you just walked up to them and said, "Be kind, rewind." And if they would have a clue what that meant.
They wouldn't, Tony.
Anybody that's our age.
That's why Blockbuster no longer exists.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep, that was stamped on everything. Be kind, rewind.
I mean, so in our generation, in our time, taking on a VHS rental spot in small town America was what gambling machines are today.
Exactly.
In our day, like every little mom and pop anything got 25 movies in. They were renting movies in the corner of their showroom.
Yep.
Didn't matter if it was a restaurant, gas station, whatever. Like, everybody's trying to get a piece of that pie.
Yep.
Where now it's like, well, shit, we'll just put a casino over there. And I mean, tell me I'm wrong. Like, no, maybe I am, but they're using the same square footage of store space to make money in a very different way. But that's how much it's changed, And
it makes you wonder. And it might be another 10, 15 years, because this whole gambling deal in Illinois has just been legalized in, the last 7, 8, 9 years, whatever it's been, roughly thereabouts. But, give it another 20 years. Yeah. That'll probably be so common then that it'll start going by the wayside, and then something else will replace that square footage.
Something new will come out, or people will just be doing it from their phones and they'll never leave their house.
Right.
Yeah. But it is interesting to see all that comes to fruition. Like, every business that had some wall space,
for sure,
had some racks with VHS tapes on them, and
they did.
Nothing more disappointing than you get there and it's gone. Because you just put the tape behind the cardboard cover. Damn it, it's gone.
Yep.
When's that coming back? You go talk to the guy. That rental's due in here, by 3:00 or whatever the time was, 5, whatever it was. It's like, it's 4:52.
Yeah.
We'll sit here and we'll wait.
And it was funny, if a really good popular movie come out, like let's just take the new Top Gun, for example.
Then they'd have 10 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or if you'd go into the big stores in Effingham, like a Family Video or whatever, I mean, they might have 30 of them.
Well, you remember when C&M remodeled that deal? Like, that was an entire strip mall dedicated to that. And that was like a mecca of all things digital at the time. and just a really nice facility or whatever. Now it's like 5 other stores. They haven't sold a video in there and
Right.
or rented a video in there in probably 20 years now. But
Yeah.
yeah,
and that's the same way with when CDs come out.
yeah.
How when it got to the end of the song, you could just hit the button and just instantly replay the song. You'd have to rewind it and make sure you stopped it at the right spot and fast forward just a little bit to get it back.
I remember GM had the old radio with the cassettes, and it automatically flipped to the B side.
Yep.
What a great thing! You didn't have to eject it, flip it over, push it back in like it auto did that, and that was something to have. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. One thing about cassettes, though, I mean, you did occasionally screw one up, but it didn't skip either. Like
Exactly.
nothing's worse than getting a scratch in your favorite CD.
I couldn't tell you the last time I put a CD in anything. I mean, it's been
2 years ago, we got ready to go on vacation. I went down to the basement to get something, and my old CD case was sitting there.
Yep.
I come back out to the truck. I threw that in. I was like, what are you going to do with that? I'm like, oh, we're going to kick it old school in this truck.
Yeah.
So we CD'd it for a long time. My kids were so appalled because it was all old.
Right.
I haven't burnt a CD in
Yeah.
20 years, So it was all stuff that they have never heard.
Yeah.
And we're whipping it out. And Kelly and I are having a great time with it. They were not having a great time. But I left it in the truck. I still drag them out here and there.
I guess would it, like if I went and bought a new truck today just off the lot, would it have a CD player, or have we got past that even now to where they don't even offer CD players now?
I don't know that they do.
They probably don't. I mean,
They probably don't. Yeah, I don't know that they do.
yeah, now it's all auxiliary and run your iPod.
You remember when Laserdisc came out?
Oh yeah, sure enough.
That didn't last very long. We never had one. A buddy of mine had one, and I'm sure the quality on it was great, but he only owned like 3 of them, and then discontinued the deal or whatever. You could.
The one thing that I'm not familiar with, or maybe I am and don't know it, was when they always had the infomercials like of a night, and it would be just take a Garth Brooks for and this commercial would just go on and on playing his songs, and it would tell you how to order that cassette or CD, at the end, call this number, whatever. But they always said CD, cassette, and LPs, which LP was what, long play, I think is what they called that or something. But I don't know exactly what an LP is. Or maybe I do, and I just didn't realize that's what it was called.
I don't know. I assumed it was a record, but
maybe it is. I don't know.
I'm not going to say because I'm not an authority on that.
Right.
I don't know.
But whatever it was,
Did you ever tape a penny to that little card and order your 10 Columbia House CDs?
No, I didn't know.
That's how I built my original CD collection. Of course, what you find out later is it's like $45 in shipping every 2 days.
Right.
But that's how you can get a lot of CDs quick. Tape your penny to that.
Yeah, I forgot about that, the old Columbia House.
So my wife and I just went to Nashville last weekend. Topic for another time, but one of the cool things in the Johnny Cash Museum was all his album covers. And then in the Country Music Hall of Fame, there was some of that. So my wife and I were talking. It's like, I remember getting CDs, pulling the little paper out and looking through the pictures, this, that, and the other. I'm like, you ain't doing that anymore. On a digital download, like that shit's inconsequential. Like the one Johnny Cash deal, like it was a big deal on how they shot these pictures and so on and so forth. And that was a huge part of the album. The album cover meant almost as much as the music back then.
Yeah.
Now the album cover is kind of a waste of your time because you're in an album,
I find it weird, like in our local Walmart, when you go there now, I don't know, there might be a few CDs left. There may not even be any, but now it's all records. We went back to records now.
Yeah, and got to play it on vinyl.
I couldn't tell you the last time I've put a record on a record player. I was probably literally 10 years old. Literally.
It's been a long time. I just carried our last 8-track player out of the shop the other day, yeah.
Yep. My grandma, she had a whole collection. I mean, it was as long as this table of records. Now, it was shit that I wouldn't have ever listened to, But I assume that stuff all got burnt when she died.
My parents still got all that. They have. I know they have Michael Jackson Thriller and a shitload of Elvis.
Yep.
Yeah.
I just remember as a kid, you couldn't screw your needle up on the record player. You had to get you a needle.
Yeah, that's a bad deal. And you couldn't be jumping around the house. God dang it, you're going to knock the needle out. If they had a record playing, you got to be still.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which I think that's just another reason for Dad to tell us to quit jumping around.
Yeah. But when I was a little kid, we had several records. And, of course, we had one of them record players for kids, just kind of a little one that you play.
I remember when Dad, I think it was for Christmas one year, sprung and got Mom a new stereo and a new Pioneer record player.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, which they still got it.
Yeah.
Like I said, we just carried the 8-track thing out the other day.
Exactly.
But there was a record player deal built into that at some fashion. And and then we had all these records and no way to play them. And he bought this whole combination deal or whatever. Remember, like, CDs used to get to one. And then you had a 5-disc changer or whatever.
Yeah.
And then, ended up being you get a 50
like a 10-disc changer. Was
a whole big
nuts.
deal.
Yeah.
I'd still like to have an old school jukebox.
Yeah,
I don't need one, but I wouldn't mind having one. Nothing. The touch tune things in the bar have ruined music because you always got some jackbag that can find all kinds of dumb shit on there that shouldn't be on there to begin with. Like at least before you knew that E54 was a good song or whatever it was, and the E56 was not.
Yeah.
And you want to hear your favorite song? Well, it ain't on here. Like we got these 50 songs, and that is what it is.
Well, at least if you went up there and looked, it's like, well, you might have this Garth Brooks CD that had 4 of his good songs, and the rest of the songs you weren't familiar with, but you knew that this jackass couldn't come in behind you and play some heavy metal screaming because it simply wasn't in the jukebox.
Yeah, it wasn't there.
Now you're going to listen to anything and everything.
Yeah, that's absolutely the case. Or you get the guy that plays like 25 songs at a restaurant and then leaves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, I just seen a TikTok the other day about a guy that was playing what they call it, touch tunes, I think now is what they call it. Yeah. And he had made the comment that he just tries to find the shittiest fucking songs he can think of. This old country shit that nobody likes. He'll just play that shit for an hour solid at the bar until everybody gets pissed.
The funniest one I saw on that was like, guy knew where his ex-wife was going with all her friends that night and played some song she hated for like 2 hours straight.
Yeah.
Just knowing that it would bother her, Solid plan.
Yeah. Yep. But I can remember as a kid having to rent a VCR at the video store. You'd rent movies and the VCR. I mean, that was like a big deal.
And those things were solid steel. They weighed like 25 pounds.
For sure.
Come popping up out of there. You better not have anything sitting on top of it and shoot it to the moon.
In fact, and not that we're old by any means, but when we were in grade school, we still watched films back then on the film roll where it projected it onto the chalkboard.
Yeah. Kids today will never know the suffering of the overhead projector.
No.
We're going to write all these notes on this translucent piece of plastic, put it on the overhead projector, let you copy it off again because we're too dumb to take it to the copy machine and make a copy for everybody. Yeah. And so instead of learning, you'll just do professional note-taking. I got one college professor I'm still mad at over that. That's all you did was write as fast as you could. What a joke. I didn't learn shit in that deal. Like, all you do was write as fast as you could, try to get it copied down, try to learn it later. They could have easily printed it off. I mean, so it was, late 90s, early 2000s. So printers and shit existed. Like, the fax machine had been out for 50 years.
Yeah.
We can make this work. But nope, no such luck.
Yeah. Have you talked to your nieces and nephews, like when you're talking about school here, like what does a modern ag class in a high school talk about today? I mean...
Well, I don't know on that. I haven't asked them about that. But for starters, like, we would never survive on a variety of levels.
Really?
Like there's not much talking ahead of school. You sit in the bleachers a certain distance apart. So I'm out right there.
Yeah.
I'm out right there. Like I can't make it through. I'm done before school ever starts. And then it just goes on from there. But as far as what they learn in modern ag class, I don't know. I'll have to inquire about that.
I'd be curious to know what they cover. Because I know the ag teacher here at our school is married to a decent-sized farmer. I mean...
And she's a great teacher from what I understand.
Yeah, same here. So I don't know how that works, if the state says you have to teach X, Y, Z, or if she can go up on her, sub-level. I don't know how that works.
But I don't know. I will ask that question this weekend. I have a niece and a nephew in that. I will ask them both and see what I find out. Neither one of them will give me an answer.
True.
Stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if they're still learning about the noxious weeds and...
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, once Roundup and a lot of this shit come out, when you had chemicals that was killing everything that actually worked back then.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, different ball game back then.
But we've kind of ran our course on that, too. Mm-hmm. Now it's coming back the other way. You're going to have to know your weeds again.
Yeah, they ain't no kidding.
We went through all that shit, but hell, I couldn't. I mean, I can get your basic weeds, but when you start getting...
Cuckold bird.
Yeah, exactly.
Inside joke. long story, needless to say, our ag teacher was not thrilled when it came up a cocoa burr, and I said it was a cocoa burr.
Yep.
Because of my last 15 answers of cocoa burr. But that's neither here nor there.
Yeah. And you had to know our ag class to understand
Yeah,
this totally. Yeah. It was anything but ag.
Yeah, total inside joke, but you weren't there, but it was funny. I'll assure you of that.
Yes, that it was.
Yeah. Anyway, well,
we better
wrap this
wind
up.
this one up. Everybody's probably traveling for the holidays. I don't know when this will hit the airwaves. If nothing else, they might be traveling back home after Christmas. We'll have to see. Might drop it tomorrow. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see. See what's going on. It's going to be cold and nasty again tomorrow.
Oh
Might
my
just have
goodness! Yeah,
I got.
I have
We
3.
shot one week ago or less than a week, last Saturday, and I totally forgot about it till yesterday. I've even thrown it up, so I need to upload that one.
Yeah, no doubt.
Anyway, time to go outside and
Enjoy,
freeze our ass off.
enjoy the warmth.
Yeah, exactly. Good old global warming back at it again.
Back at it again.
Well, I don't know when this will hit the airwaves. If it happens to hit them tomorrow, you guys have a Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
If it hits the airwaves after Christmas, then just forget that
have a
last
Merry
one.
Christmas just 300 and some days
Yeah,
in advance.
yeah.
Just
Or
think
a
about
Happy
it.
New Year. We're going to cover
Happy
both
New
bases
Year,
here.
Happy Hanukkah.
Yeah.
Merry 4th of July.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll see you next time.